What's going on, everybody? My name is Linwood. Thank y'all so much for being here. I hope you guys are excited because I am. Why? Because this next hour is so jam-packed full of hope, positivity, optimism, gratitude, mental toughness, and an attitude check, baby. So if I were you, I'd get ready for it by pulling up a chair, pulling up a couple of shots, letting your hair down, kicking your shoes off, but just relax because this will be the best hour that you have received, and I'm excited for it. Let's go!
Joseph Jaffe is not famous. I'm famous. Joseph Jaffe is a delusional human being who thinks he's famous. He's not famous. He's not famous. I'm famous.
This is my best kind of show notes. We didn't touch one of them, not even one of them. I'm not sure which one is Paul Rudd and which one is Lane Green.
Final card here is the ultimate outcome.
Today is take your dog to work day.
Like Scooby-Doo.
Without further ado, his debut.
Sweet Caroline.
Everybody say hello to Sammy. Is it not good?
I'm just pausing so that you just are at the front of your seat.
I'm so enormously flattered.
Branding is not a bad blind date.
I'm gonna have to take a picture of this.
No, this is agape. This is love.
I really enjoyed this. You did do your homework. You asked great questions.
I'm flattered. Thank you. You just made my day.
Look at you! You are insane.
How did I do that?
You're
How
insane.
did I do that?
You're insane.
Well, happy Monday, everybody. It is Monday, October 25th, 9 p.m. in the evening, which means it's time for another episode of Joseph Jaffe is Not Famous, but my next guest is very famous. And of course, in that little, notice that there's like a little square. It's almost perfect, the shelf space. It just fits a QR code that allows you to get Jaffe coin. All you have to do is point your smartphone towards that QR code. And remember, that QR code is only live between 9 and 10 p.m. So this is my way of actually recognizing and rewarding people that are watching live. I just really, really geek out at this. I love the fact that the streaming era has a little edge to it as well. And you can be part of the Jaffe economy by going to rally.io/creator/Jaffe. Actually, there's something else that I've been talking about over the last week. My NFT, the Jaffe NFT, the Joseph Jaffe is Not Famous NFT. There are two. On the left in color is a beautiful mosaic of a book that my wife actually created for me. It is the first 50 interviews ever on my show. Every page dedicated to one of those interviews, and the NFT is a mosaic, a collage of those interviews that ranges from $54 to $5,000. And then on the right, not for sale, is the VIP version that goes to my regulars, that goes to show guests. In fact, my guest tonight will get one of those. And what do you get for it? You get the ebook of the actual physical book. You get access to pre-tapings. You get access to audition shows, to reunion shows, and a few little surprises as well, like, you never know, backstage passes, cameos, and such as well. And if you want to find out more and maybe even purchase one of these, just go to nft.rally.io/Jaffe Juice. I love the fact that we are creating new models, new ways to engage our customers, our community, our family, using the power of technology. So give it a whirl, give it a review, and hopefully you will be part of this expanding community. Well, this week we kick it off with Ethan Beute, and he is, as we would say in South Africa, he is a beaut. I don't know if people say that here in the US. A beaut, as in a beauty. He's a beaut. Kate O'Neill tomorrow, J.D. Gershbein on Wednesday, and the very famous Robert Rose rounding out the week. on Thursday. And I hope you will join us at 9 o'clock for all of these events. But tonight, we're focusing on the co-author, the new co-author of Human-Centered Communication. And I'll tell you a little bit more about Ethan when the time comes. But this is great for me. It's great that I can have him on my show because I've been on his show multiple times and really, really just loved that experience. And I certainly hope that he loves the experience, the reciprocation experience. Well, speaking of which, let's get into tonight's seated soliloquy. And of course, the seated soliloquy will tie in to Mr. Ethan Beute and to his new book. And it is called, very apropos, it is called Noise. So my guest tonight is going to talk about a rather interesting concept, digital pollution. And I'll give him the floor, should I say the screen, to make his case and more importantly, provide a solution. What I like about this concept is that it is a modern day or digital makeover of an age-old marketing axiom, breaking through the clutter. In recent times, we've refreshed this somewhat to compare, contrast, and discern signal from noise. Now, the common thread is the tension and tussle between quantity and quality. Back to Marketing 101 for a moment, what we really are talking about here is the difference between the 30-second spot or mass marketing and its diametrically opposed counterpart of one-to-one or relationship marketing. What struck me amidst this backwards and forwards is that we've never really focused on the clutter or noise, and specifically how we are adding to it and responding to it, both professionally and as consumers. Also, and this is something I addressed right at the beginning of my very first book, we don't give enough thought to the relationship between the signal and the noise. Ad legend Lee Clow once said, "The problem isn't advertising, it's bad advertising." He's half right, but he's also half wrong. The problem is advertising, and the problem is bad advertising. What is the stuff that isn't working doing to the stuff that is working? And I'll tell you, that wasn't rhetorical. It's completely drowning it out, suffocating it, suppressing it. It doesn't matter how great your messaging is if no one is paying attention in the first place. If a great ad airs in a forest and no one's there to see it, does it make an impression? You bet it doesn't. Now, my guest tonight has taken two very powerful ingredients, email and video, and combined them to great effect. Actually, he's taken three. Include human beings, or what he calls human-centered communication, into the recipe, and you have a yummy treat. So what are you doing to counter digital pollution or even media pollution? To succeed in business, it's not good enough anymore to just focus on the solution. We need to equally stand up and take responsibility for the problem, lower and minimize the triggers of distraction, deception, and dilution, and simultaneously raise and maximize the levers of engagement, connection, and intimacy. Simple, right? Assuming advertising is not going away is a dangerous, high-stakes game to play. So let's be masters of our fate, shall we? And now master of his fate is Mr. Ethan Beute. And allow me to give you a little bit of an introduction to him. Ethan Beute is Chief Evangelist at BombBomb, host of the Customer Experience podcast and co-author of Rehumanize Your Business and the brand new Human-Centered Communication. He spent the past decade helping business professionals of all kinds communicate more clearly, connect more effectively, and convert at a higher rate using personal video messages. And he sent more than 12,000 videos himself. That's 12,000 selfie videos himself. But let me tell you something about him. He is not vain by any stretch of the imagination. Let's say hello to him. Ethan, welcome to my show. I've turned the tables.
Thank you. It's nice to be on the other side of the mic with you. It's always good to be in conversation with you. And I love the soliloquy. It's a great setup to what I think is going to be a fun conversation.
You bet your bottom dollar it will be. And Ethan, you are guest number 292 on this little adventure of mine. I'm sure that you've played a role in some way, shape, and form in terms of influencing, inspiring, molding the direction that I've taken. So, even just the experiences with you and just seeing how you use video has been an education. So thank you for the role that you've played.
Good. You've been very influential on my life and career long before we were ever in direct communication. And so when you released Built to Suck, I immediately reached out and you immediately responded. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is like Joseph Jaffe. I had read 2 of your books prior to that one. And anyway, you've been influential on me too.
The not famous Joseph Jaffe. No,
yes,
no doubt. It's been amazing actually to be very honest with you, how many people have come on the show and have, said, and like, for example, even, Nancy Duarte, in talking to her, Nancy said to me, like, I've known of you and I've followed you and it's just weird because you don't realize, I think, the impact that you have on other people. I mean, one, not me or you or one, us, we, all of us. It's not an ego thing. It's actually just a very humbling thing. When you realize that just a blog post, a tweet, a piece of content that you created, you don't know what happens to it. You don't know what its life cycle, what its journey looks like, and how many lives and careers it can touch. It's very humbling. So thank you again.
Sure. And I think we could both agree. I've only done 2 books. You've done what, 5 or 6?
5. And I don't know. And an ebook.
Okay. So there's just something really interesting and fun, just specific in this vein that we're in right now, of this old-fashioned, traditional, physical, tangible, analog thing, and how it can reach beyond our digital reach and get to people that we maybe couldn't reach digitally, or we don't know that we could reach them digitally. And it's been really fun to capture ideas and put them into books, even the old fashioned ones, beyond ebooks and beyond Audible books and these other things. It's fun to see where that reaches. Even with this book that I released 2.5 years ago, I still get messages, whether it's a direct email or whether it's a LinkedIn back channel message or something like that, where someone has encountered it, someone gave it to them, or they ran into it somewhere. We still have books floating around some of the airport bookstores. And so it's interesting. Just this old fashioned thing has an amazing reach and amazing impact in a way that some of our digital outreach doesn't.
It is true. And it's also interesting, as you saw earlier with the launch and the release of my NFT, that we have these interesting hybrid models. But the thing with an NFT, like you have these amazing pre-orders, these pre-order bundles, is you can actually really build both online and offline experiences into an all digital product. And I like the mixing and matching. I like the ability that I also like the smart contracts that I can reprogram an NFT to suddenly add a signed copy of my book or even your book. So it's interesting now that we have the physical, we have the digital, we have the virtual, and maybe those are our 3 primary colors, and how we mix and match them can actually produce new tones or Pantones or colors. So early days still, but exciting times. You've got all the colors behind you, I suppose.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely messy and blurry and interesting. And, the kind of the fear-based side of me prefers just to retreat into what's definitely real. But there's, to your point, there's a lot of color and opportunity and joy to be had in this messy future.
Well, that was the perfect setup, because you spoke about fear, and you need to be afraid. You need to be very afraid, because today, October 25th, is National Chucky Day. So I don't know if you're afraid of dolls or demons, etc., but it is National Chucky Day. And I have to ask you this question as we take a pause from business and we get a little bit ridiculous. what is the scariest movie that you've ever seen in your life?
Ooh, gosh, really good. I mean, my first reaction, although it wasn't like scary, but it was like a really powerful experience for me, was Wall-E. I don't know if you remember that one, but it wasn't a horror movie per se. Gosh, horror movies, I'm not like the jump scare ones aren't as interesting to me as some of like my son, for some reason, got fascinated with horror movies. And so things like Insidious, like there are a lot of these one-word Sinister. There are like a bunch of these one-word titles that are like the Conjuring series. Some of those are pretty decent and beyond like the basic kind of stupid jump scare movies. So for me, like a good psychological thriller. But in terms of like this reality, I'm thinking of Idiocracy and I'm thinking of Wall-E, and those are both even more frightening than this imagined horror universe.
I think probably for me was The Social Dilemma. I'm just
Good
kidding.
one. Very good. That fits there too.
Yeah, but for me it was Salem's Lot. And so much so, I guess it was, I mean, I think of it as a movie, but I think it was like a little mini series, watched on 35 millimeter projector back when I was 10 years old. So much so that I think the Salem in question is Salem, I think it's New Hampshire, but I will not drive into that town ever in my life. You can give me a keynote presentation there with $1 million, and I will rather pass it on to one of my colleagues, not setting foot into Salem even during the daytime, because there are vampires there. And I just don't know it's true. I don't know it for a fact. I just know it's true.
It's really good.
All right, so now we are going to go into one more little fun segment that I call fun facts. And you have these really interesting fun facts about you, Ethan. Here is the first one, which is you've driven a bus, not just driven a bus. You earned a commercial driver's license and drove a full-size school bus to 24 cities in a year. And truth be told, and I think our investigators were able to find a real photo of this. Would that be younger Ethan?
That is me. That's amazing. By the way, your artwork was amazing. That was a really fun one. Yeah. So this was a Microsoft project. I was fortunate enough to get connected like right after I finished college at the University of Michigan. A woman that I had interned for introduced me to this woman who worked for Microsoft, who was putting together this kind of central region project. And they needed someone that was like unencumbered by things like children or a mortgage. And so I basically hit the road with this giant school bus that I had to learn to drive as a 10-station mobile computer lab. No mobile internet, mind you. This was like in the mid to late 90s, like 96, 97. And it was awesome. So I was in like Toronto and Ottawa. I was in Cleveland, Cincinnati, Columbus, Detroit, Chicago, Minneapolis, all the way down to Dallas, Houston, San Antonio, and kind of everything else in that kind of central stripe of the US. And so it was super fun and weird. And like in hindsight, knowing how tethered we are to our smartphones and GPS and turn-by-turn directions and all that, it's just amazing to reflect on now, you know, a couple of decades removed. The fact that I drove that school bus through cities like Houston, Texas, where the interstates are like 6 lanes wide. And all I know is that I'm looking for, you know, the turn onto this next interstate. And you find out it's like a left side exit 2 miles ahead. And you have to move this bus across, you know, 5-6 lanes of traffic in 2 miles. And, you know, and know where you're going in your head, because you don't have this turn-by-turn guidance. So anyway, it was super fun. I went to like CompUSA's and Best Buys and zoos and museums and stuff. And sometimes created joy for kids and families demoing software, and sometimes got berated by some hardcore people about their own thoughts and opinions about what Microsoft should or shouldn't be doing. Of course, I had no knowledge of any of that. I was just driving this bus and demoing software.
Well, there's a very interesting thing is that you have, I guess, an article or a blog entry where you talk about the whole experience, very extensive on your site, but it begins with these words, which I thought were very, very profound and telling. Sometimes it's easy to say yes. And I think maybe 80% of our battles in life is, you know, the fact that we say no too easily. and the battle to get to yes. And even, Francine Hardaway, who was on the show, she says yes to everything. And then she figures it out later. So there was something about that just, I was like all in when I read that. Sometimes it's easy to say yes. And I would love for you to comment on, as you said, even, this is a metaphor for life, right? Know where you're going in your head especially when you don't have turn by turn directions or guidance. That seems like almost like a philosophical, piece of advice for how to live your life.
That's great. Yeah. It's, my default, by the way, it historically has been no. I'm a very conservative decision maker. On average, I would say I'm risk averse. But this one was, do you want to learn to drive a school bus and go to a bunch of cities and demo software? Like, yeah, it sounds pretty good. Sounds pretty good to 21 or 22-year-old me. It sounded interesting. It sounded challenging. It was way more interesting than what I was doing at the time. And it left a lot of questions, but to your observation there, we just figure them out as we go. And so that was an easy, I didn't even know what I was doing. I just knew that, let's say I'm going to be in Cincinnati for the next 9 days. So I get to Cincinnati. All I know is who my contact is. So I get to town, I call her or him, and they're like, all right, let's connect. I'll swing by your hotel. I'll email you the plans for the next 8 days. And so it's just this really loose thing, which is not my default operating, but the more practice you get with anything, and this extends to, video messaging and video email or anything else we want to start trying to do. Attitude is often driven by action, and action, practice builds confidence, confidence builds success kind of scenario. And so I didn't know what to expect. I just knew that it sounded interesting and fun and challenging. And I think that trio is super powerful. I've been at BombBomb for a decade. And when I think about that, I think, gosh, no one stays at a software company for a decade. Not really. It's pretty rare. There are only some pockets of the economy where anyone stays anywhere for a decade anymore. And when I think about it in hindsight, because I just hit that 10-year anniversary, which makes you a little bit reflective, and, people want to recognize it, which, reminds you of old stories and circumstances and how it used to be in these phases of growth and development. The thing that stayed true throughout is that it's been fun and interesting and challenging. And I think whenever we can encounter opportunities that fit that criteria, that's a yes.
All right. So you've opened the door, and I am going to gently enter the room because I am a huge, huge fan of you and of BombBomb. But before we do that, I was thinking, so this is interesting. Ethan says that he's a conservative guy. He's risk averse, and yet, you innovate. Yet you get on a bus and drive across the country. Yet this innovative product. I don't even know that I would call BombBomb a software company. I know it is, but for me, it's just like an experience, a customer experience company. But I thought, what I would do right now is actually take a little bit of a break and go to Gregarious, who is, because it's Monday, he submits an entrepreneurial segment. And today's segment is on optimism. And I think like that to me is you. You are an optimistic person, and you're a person that kind of just does it. As you said, attitude is driven by action. So I never watch these in advance because I want to watch them for the first time, just like you are and just like people are. So let's hear what Gregarious had to say today.
Perpetual optimism is a force multiplier. I'm back with one more quote from General Colin Powell. And this is one of his 13 rules that he laid out for leadership. And I can't really deny that it is incredibly important to be optimistic, much related to our earlier vignette. I think the idea here is that it's your job to be optimistic. Let's be clear, right? The whole world is happy to tell you why you shouldn't succeed, why you won't succeed. The whole world is ready to tell you all the things you won't get right and all the things you are doing wrong. So you have to be optimistic. But if I was to tweak this quote in any way, the thing I would probably point out is to not be irrationally optimistic or to be incapable of understanding the world outside as well. Internal to your organization, your job is always going to be optimistic, to try to provide a silver lining, to try to provide a path forward, a reason to continue. But the reality is this: if you deny what's happening outside, you will also lose the support of your team. And it's really important that that optimism be, sort of cut with realism, not pessimism, right? I think pessimism has very little value. It is useful to be conservative in our estimations, but pessimistic, probably not. There's plenty of other people to do that for you. So thank you, Colin Powell. Perpetual optimism is a force multiplier. It can do so much good in the world, and you should leverage that. But remember, that optimism is a tool, and it's a tool to be used alongside many other tools. So don't rely on just one of them.
All right, so good. So
Yeah,
good.
isn't it?
What it reminded me of are two words that you put adjacent in the seated soliloquy, which are tension and tussle. Like, he leads with optimism, but then he walks us back to this reality of, well, you can't ignore what's actually going on or else, you'll lose people. But he cautions not to go too far into pessimism. And so this balance of somewhere in between optimism and realism. And I think he also used the word calculate. It just really gets to this tension and tussle of like, and this is innovation too. It's how do we accept the reality that we're in while we still push to this imagined better future that will stay in imagination until we actually create it through some process of action and innovation. That was great.
I actually think what you just said, like just now, was like poetry. And I was gonna say maybe the way I reconcile you is we'll call you conservatively optimistic or cautiously optimistic, but it does show that it's interesting when you take these two diametrically opposed forces and you bring them together, you can actually create maybe a beautiful bridge between where you are today and where you need to go tomorrow, where you need to head to tomorrow. And another of those contradictions actually, it speaks to one of your fun facts, but I think it's very relevant in terms of how you live your life. You're probably thinking, what exactly is he about to say? And what I'm about to say is this: you respond to hate mail with personal videos, and 60% of the time it works every single time. So this gets into this unique product that you have, but also this unique approach. So tell us a little bit about, first of all, how could anybody ever send you hate mail? You're so likable. But tell us about this, this approach using video to kind of, as Jay Bear would say, to hug your haters.
Yeah. So great. I love that. And of course that's a pickup on, it's a Will Ferrell line, I feel like, or it's from Anchorman maybe, but I was the first and only marketer at BombBomb for a few years, and I joined the company in 2011. And so this was, still kind of like the rise of social. It was still the start of kind of early stages of Web 2.0. We were still doing a lot of, mass mindset type stuff, especially early on before we kind of had our feet under us and knew where we were going and knew what we were about and knew who would adopt this video email and video messaging approach that we were developing with and for our customers and community. And so I sent a lot of email, and it all came from my personal email address, which is ethan@bombbomb.com, which is the same address that I've had for even before I joined the company full time. I was doing part-time project work for them. And so lots and lots of people have my personal email address, and lots of webinar invitations and onboarding and nurture sequences, like to training and education as you're kind of getting into your free trial or your new customer account, discounts, follow-ups after events and conferences and those types of things, which is an environment we thrived in because it's so directly human to human. And it's just kind of our natural bias and tendency to really, those are just winning situations for us, but you need to follow up after those if you want to turn it into revenue and customer accounts and things. So tons of emails came from my account, and naturally, some people were done with the email, but instead of unsubscribing or even marking it for abuse, they would reply back and say things like that Rhett Link headline that you had there. It's like, I effing hate you. Stop. This is garbage, blah, blah, blah. And so what I would do, it was partly for fun, partly to demonstrate the value of the premise of the software and this experience we're trying to create and empower other people to create for the people that matter to them, was just to reply back and say, hey man, my name is Ethan. I'm the one who sent you that email. Obviously it does me no good to send you an email you don't want to receive, and it doesn't do you any good, doesn't do me any good. I just want to let you know that I'm sorry. I did receive your email. I've personally and manually unsubscribed you from both of the systems that we use to send email. And if you ever change your mind and decide that this is an interesting opportunity for you, just reach out and let me know. I'm at this email address, and I'd be happy to resubscribe you to some of the email that we're providing. And I hope you have a great day. And so what happens there is sometimes you never hear back. Sometimes you hear, they double down or triple down. Like, no, seriously, F you, dude. I told you I don't want to hear from you again, even with a personal video where you greet them by name and describe the situation. But then very often people would reply immediately and say, oh my gosh. And it's because we've wound up, big idea here, for me anyway, that I'm exercising and working out. And I'm sure other people have already gone down this road, so it might not be novel to you personally, as a viewer, or you, Joseph. But, we're only 200 years removed from the onset of the Industrial Revolution. I grew up in the 80s, where it was all what Seth Godin describes as the television industrial complex, which you well know is, part of life after the 30-second spot, and where are we going from this kind of mass approach. But this mass approach affects everything. And in this mass approach, we at times can dehumanize ourselves and dehumanize other people because we're all interchangeable. We're treating people uniformly, with homogeneity, et cetera. And, sometimes I was sending emails and email campaigns and email sequences that, didn't respect people as people. And we were playing it more as a numbers game. And I think anyone that's honest with themselves has found themselves in that situation at some point in their life or their career, treating people like numbers rather than like people. And so when I stop and take a moment out of my day and I personally put my face and name behind this apology and this acknowledgement that I've mistreated you, and that's bad for you and it's bad for me and it's not going to happen anymore, and here's what I've done to resolve it. A, it's cathartic for me, but then B, someone gets to say, oh, this isn't just some nameless, faceless company. There's a dude there whose job it is to do this stuff. And he sees me and appreciates me and values me and is apologizing to me. He seems to be sincere in it, et cetera. It's just a really powerful moment for both people. And I think if we can find more opportunities to do that, not necessarily triggered by a negative experience, but if we can find more opportunities to do this throughout our day and throughout our week, which, we could spend an hour just talking about that alone, because I've discovered many of them over the past decade myself as a practitioner and being someone who is learning and teaching this stuff all the time with a wide variety of people, which you were kind enough to mention in the introduction, that our lives and businesses will be much better and healthier and satisfying. And I actually think, to the human-centered communication, digital pollution conversation that we might touch on a little bit, I actually think it's the most viable path forward, to create more of these moments for ourselves and for other people.
Yeah, amen. And I'm not sure exactly which direction I want to go in because I have a quote. I always find a quote for my guests, and the quote is perfect for what you just did.
Let's do this.
But then I want to tell people about the company, and also I want to introduce the concept of digital pollution. So here's what I'm going to do. I am going to play this video, and that tells people a little bit more about exactly what you do and how you do it.
You know how important it is to build and maintain relationships in your business. Yet these days, most communication happens through plain text, which doesn't show your personality and makes it difficult to create that meaningful connection. But what if your messages were as personal, engaging, and effective as an in-person or virtual meeting? BombBomb enables you to record and send personal video messages to anyone on virtually any communication platform. It works where you work, directly from your Chrome browser, your Gmail inbox, or your mobile device. You can record from your webcam, record your screen, or both, so you can communicate more clearly, authentically, and effectively.
So what I would have said to describe BombBomb is, imagine you're getting an email, except in the email is a thumbnail of a person that you kind of know, but it looks interesting because it's not canned. In fact, maybe you see today's date or the newspaper, like a hostage might hold up, or something that's like, wait a second, did I just emailed him, or we were just texting? How did he, there's like this weird surprise and delight. How is this? How did these miniature people get into the screen? How did they shrink, Joseph? There's like a wonderment and awe. And the next thing you know, you click on it, and seamlessly, without plugins, without downloads and everything, the video plays, and you've just got yourself a personalized, customized, real-time basic video message. And it's just amazing. The first time I ever got one, it just blew me away.
Yeah, it's the key innovation here is kind of twofold, I think. It's actually more nuanced than that, but we'll keep it simple. The first is this idea that video is not just for marketing, that video is for communication. I think for so long, in my first probably 7 years with the company, we had to open so many of our presentations, creating this divide between marketing through video and relationships through video, just to help people understand the opportunity that exists beyond YouTube channels and homepage videos and video on social media and all of that. This idea that video can be used in place of what's typically faceless typed out text, or to add to faceless typed out text. So that's one, like this video can be used differently, period, is a kind of a unique thing. Now, videos become a lot more nuanced with lives and all this, the types of things that you're doing, and the idea that this has been so democratized. There's a lot going on with video, but this one-to-one or one-to-few or very specific targeted, like you could actually record a video once and do it, use it, send it a bunch of times. And what you would do is like go into, your CRM and say, if this is true, this is true, this is true, this number is between this range and these two things are false, send this video message at that time, like as soon as all those criteria are met, and it will still feel super personal. And you can do things in the video, like you can hold things up in that little animated preview. I could write your name down. I could hold up your business card. I could screen record over your homepage or your LinkedIn profile or something else so that you know that it's just for you. But this relationships through video is one big thing. And then the other big thing is the speed to do it. I've sent like 150 videos in an afternoon before. And it was actually in like 3 hours. And it's because I knew what I wanted to do, but every single one of them was personal. So it's this idea of, email address, record, send, email address, record, send, email address, record, send, and having this workflow to do it, which no one would ever do if they had to like record on a separate camera and trim the front and the back and then upload it to YouTube and then mark it as private because it's not for your channel. It's just for this one person, and then screenshot the video and put it over in this other place and all these other things. And so the innovation of making it quick and easy to do from Gmail, from Outlook, from our web app, from our mobile apps, from Salesforce, from Outreach, from Zendesk, and all these other places, I think is another powerful piece of it.
It's really amazing to see. And I think it's, it's just drawing on very simple, elementary and universal truths, which is there is nothing sweeter than somebody mentioning your name. And it's the little things like the business card. These are all like best practices, but they're also like small practices that make huge differences. Did I lose you?
Yes. And I don't know if that's on my side.
This can happen from time to time. Let me see if I can fix it. But also, and video wrong, video is not out as well. So let's see if
yeah, it's all choppy for me, but I'm speed testing really well right now. Hello, hello.
We'll see if that makes a difference. Does that make any difference?
I think so.
All right. So I just did a little bit of a refresh and a reboot, and here I am. what I was saying earlier was you basically take two interesting things, Ethan. One is, the sweet sound of someone's name, or everybody just loves hearing their name. Even in that first video, you must have mentioned my name, Joseph, so many times. And then little small things like the business card, holding up the book. These are not complicated, complex, psychologically manipulative. These are just basic, elementary human to human connection points.
Right. And it's crazy. It is crazy to me how refreshing it is. And the fact that even a decade into this, that people will still reply and say, oh my gosh, that was the best email I've ever got, which nobody says unless there's a video in it, or unless it's like this truly personal moment. And there are a couple of key dynamics here. One, and we've already talked about it a little bit, is that we're all accustomed to, mass, and then now probably more segmented stuff, and then even personalized. There's a big difference between personal and personalized. Personalized takes some variable data and slugs it in and gives us the suggestion that this is actually for us in the moment and it's contextually relevant. Personal is, I know you, I know you're headed to South Africa, I know several things about your books, I know about your show, and I've seen some episodes, we've spent time in conversation. And so when I send you something that is truly personal, it feels a lot different than all the other stuff that we're getting all the time. And this goes back to kind of the signal and noise thing. Like immediately there are triggers that say signal, 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 all signal, it's not like faint signal and noise. It's like, this is immediately jumps out from all the other stuff I'm sorting through in my LinkedIn messages, in Facebook, in my email inbox, in all my text messages. It immediately jumps out. And all it is, it goes back to your sound of someone's voice. It's all any of us wants, even the most hardcore badass type A people watching and listening, all any of us wants is to be seen and heard and understood and appreciated and valued and respected for the unique human being that we are. And so if we can create these moments in our days and in our weeks to let people know that we see them, hear them, appreciate them, that we're thinking about them, that we have an answer to their question, and we do it in this more complete way where they can feel our intent, they can feel our motivation, they can feel that we care, they can tell that we believe what we're saying, we can tell that we believe that there's something useful in it for them, in a way that faceless typed out text simply cannot, because it's missing all of that rich human data. It just makes it so much more satisfying for people. It makes it easier for them to understand. It makes them so much more likely to say yes. And it's not because of manipulation or persuasion or any of that. It's because all the things that the human brain needs to make a safe, healthy decision, which is to say, does this person believe what they say? Do they have my best interests in mind? Do they seem to care about me? Can I trust this situation? Are they competent to deliver whatever the promise is? That doesn't come through really in most of our digital communication, but we can take a moment to be our whole selves in a short video experience. Then all of that data is packed into that message, and people can so much more easily, confidently step forward with you. And so there's a lot at play there. A lot of it is deeply human. And ironically, one of the reasons this habit is so difficult for so many people to form, we have decades of training and just pecking out our messages in an intellectual fashion and mechanical fashion, as opposed to just letting go and being a little bit loose and being a little bit vulnerable in these moments of just being yourself for 45 seconds straight in a digital format. We very often hate the way we look and sound, and that trips a lot of people up, and they expect that they should be good at it because they've been on Zoom for, perpetually for a couple of years now. And so they feel like they should be good at it, but it's a new skill. It's a new practice. And so this discomfort and this vulnerability is very threatening to someone who is trying to build this habit or build this muscle or build this skill. And so they very often quit before they start in earnest because they don't like the way they look or sound. They fear judgment and rejection. And even that fear of judgment and rejection is ancient. Like if you were judged and rejected 2,000 years ago, you would die. Like in the desert or on the mountainside or by the ocean or wherever you and your tribe were, you needed each other. And so you needed to be accepted. You needed to be valued. You needed to be viewed in a positive way. You needed to be a pro-social operator. And so in so many ways, into your observation, to wind this up, so much of what you observe there is just, these are ancient human truths. And so which is we've developed this need to judge your intent before we even judge the contents of your message, right? Is it sincere? Do you mean it? If you don't, then you could easily manipulate me, take advantage of me. The consequences could be fatal or significant at a minimum. And so all of this human, it comes down to trust and our ability to make safe choices based on what we can learn from the other human being or the other human beings in context. And so by sending some of these videos, we can give people a lot more information that they need to feel safe and confident and perhaps even excited, because there's a transfer of emotion that happens through this experience as well.
I mean, you know, I got to bring the crowd in here. That was a bit of a mic drop. That was your own soliloquy, and it was beautifully, beautifully articulated. I want to touch on one thing as we get into this concept of yours that you've put together, digital pollution, because it's interesting. You're pushing off against digital pollution, even in the book. Although today in the conversation, we're talking about this idea of, it's a much more, it's less ephemeral, this idea of faceless text based, because that's maybe one, and the other thing that you spoke about, which is the numbers game, when we just cut, paste, dear influential blogger, dear first name, last name,
dude,
mail merge, mail purge, you know, and there's something else going on here. So what I would love for you to do is just set up digital pollution, and then we'll kind of use that as a springboard to talk about the book.
Sure. So digital pollution is something that we've all felt. You maybe hear about it in different pockets. You feel it every day, but we haven't really created a collective conversation about it. There hasn't been really a name for this confusion, frustration, annoyance, sometimes threat or danger. Is this email from who it says it's from? Is this link safe to click? Can I actually touch that attachment, or is that going to install a bunch of malware on my computer? So that's some of the hardcore end of digital pollution, is this intentional seeking of stealing data, stealing money, compromising identity, compromising data, etc. Ransomware, malware, phishing attacks, cyber attacks, denial of service attacks, all this other stuff. On the far other end is kind of like this. It's sillier, but it's still frustrating and slows us down. It distracts us from what we're trying to do. This is maybe that group text message that really should have just been one-to-one, but someone, like, all of a sudden you pick up your phone and there are like 72 messages. You're like, what the hell happened since I last picked up my phone? And you're in this group text message. You're like, I don't really want to be here. I don't know why I'm seeing all these replies, etc. And sometimes, again, on this frustrating, but still kind of silly and innocent end of it is that autocorrect or typo where you're like very clearly misunderstood or perhaps even embarrassed by it, or you're on the receiving end of that type of a thing. So that happens too. But where you and I have spent a lot of time thinking and writing and learning and teaching, Joseph, is in this, what I call consequential pollution. So you have innocent on one end, intentional on the other, but there's this big fat middle of consequential pollution. You don't intend to do it, but it's a consequence of the way you're going about trying to create or deliver value. And it's because we're in this long, slow walkout from this mass market, mass marketing, mass production, mass mindset, where we kind of treat people, even if we're getting segmented, that starts to feel like we're being treated still kind of like numbers on the receiving end of it. And so we need to be aware of the costs of what we're doing, especially in these kind of customer functions or revenue functions of sales, marketing, and customer service, customer success. Like, so much of the work that we're doing leaves some of this negative emotional resonance that, it's easier than ever to ignore, block, unsubscribe, mark for abuse, with a tool like Superhuman. If someone sends you one too many unwelcome emails, you can block their entire domain. So not only is that sales rep dead to you, that entire company has no access to your inbox because the whole domain's been blocked. And so if we want to high five each other for moving from like a 2.4% conversion rate to a 3% conversion rate and say, oh my God, we're super geniuses, we just increased conversion by 25%, while ignoring the 97% and what's happening in that population. Some of them are just swipe, delete, swipe, delete. We've all become accustomed to, with adaptive behavior. We're blind to so much of this pollution. But there's some section in there that creates negative word of mouth that will block you so that they can never reach you again, or you can never reach them again rather. And, you know, we've all seen some of this on social media too, is like, if they're kind, they'll blur the face and the name, but they'll say, look at this crap that I just got. You know, I just accepted this LinkedIn connection request and look at this crazy 5-paragraph copy paste thing. And so, you know, the costs of ignoring the failure rate and ignoring what's happening among these people that aren't responding, aren't engaging, et cetera. We can't just say, you know, awesome, we're holding our email open rate at 24%. We're doing pretty good here. We need to be honest with ourselves about who are the 76% in that scenario. What are they thinking? What aren't we doing? And the big missing piece here is that, and this kind of bridges into human-centered design and human-centered communication, we're essentially taking the principle of human-centered design and applying it to our daily digital communication. The 3 overlapping circles that comprise a human-centered design, which you can apply to any system, process, product, service, message, experience, et cetera. You can apply it anywhere. So we're applying it to digital communication. These 3 things overlap: desirability and what humans need or want, feasibility, what technology allows us to do, and then viability, the definition for business success. So we're not saying, you know, on a moral grounds, treat every person with a truly unique one-to-one personal experience every single time. That's not sustainable in so many business models. So we need to honor that viability. But the problem is, in a mass market, mass mindset, treat people like numbers, not like people scenario, we start not with the needs of the people that this product or service or system or process is for, or that it will affect. Instead, we start with viability and our own definition of business success. What do we need? What is our revenue target? What is our reply target? What is our click target? What is our, you know, we think about our own needs first as a business or an organization. Then we go to the possibilities of technology. And frankly, technology is cheaper and more powerful than ever before. And most people stop there. And so when we operate at where those 2 circles overlap and leave out the human piece, we wind up doing these overly automated things that feel mechanical. They feel maybe a little bit personalized, but we all see through it now. Our BS detectors constantly evolve with the evolution of these technologies. You know, fool me once, okay? It's a new thing. I haven't seen that before, but the 3rd time I'm like, I'm on to you. I can smell it. I can feel it. There's no sense of your intent. And so my default is that you're being selfish and greedy and you want something that I'm not necessarily prepared to give. And so I regard you maybe as more pollution than just noise. Noise is relatively benign. It's frustrating in its own right at its volume, but it's benign. Pollution is kind of the negative affect or what we judge out of the noise to say, this is actually annoying, frustrating, dangerous. I don't want any of this anymore. And I'm going to do whatever I can to get rid of it. And so not only do we need to not put viability first and then default to feasibility and leave out the humans, we need to start with the humans first. And it seems simple. This is basic golden rule and platinum rule thinking, like do unto others as you prefer to be done unto you. Like, why would we do marketing or sales in a way that we hate to be a part of ourselves as buyers or people in a consideration set? Why would we do that? So at some level, this is basic, going back to where we were 5 or 10 minutes ago. And so all we're calling for is to put people first and put other people's needs and interests at least on an equal footing or a level playing field as your own. And you're going to be much more successful in the future.
I was jotting down some other abilities, and I love feasibility, viability, desirability. I also added in relatability, compatibility, and the idea of relatability and compatibility. I was also thinking about, like, specifically this idea of the connection point, because so often with a sender and a receiver, you know, we forget about the connection. We forget about the actual connection. We think about them as 2 different people, sender, receiver, but they're connected. They're one, and maybe that word empathy comes back into play. Remember earlier I said to you, and by the way, did you like the little human-centered collage that I created,
Super nice.
or homage, including the logo at the top?
That's fantastic.
As well. The book is called Human-Centered Communication and a Business Case Against Digital Pollution. It was really funny, Ethan, because earlier when you were talking about the industrial age and the industrial revolution, this was the quote that I found relating to digital pollution. So unbelievably apt and apropos. Digital pollution is more complicated than industrial pollution. Industrial pollution is the byproduct of a value-producing process, not the product itself. On the internet, value and harm are often one and the same. And I just thought it was kind of really interesting. And this actually came from an article called "The World is Choking" on digital pollution by Judy Estrin and Sam Gill. So I just thought that was.
I'm so glad that I call that in this book. I quote Judy Estrin twice. And I refer to this article as the single best and most important piece written on the internet about digital pollution. And so, you know, if you Google something like digital pollution, you might find that blog post that you were kind enough to put up. You'll definitely find Judy Estrin's piece. But what you'll see more than anything is the idea that like all of this digital and virtual activity is putting demand on server farms, which require a lot of electricity. And so we're burning a lot of fossil fuels, doing all this digital and virtual work. And so it's really industrial pollution, but because of digital activity, what Judy Estrin is getting at, and it's an amazing piece. I highly recommend it to anybody. She's getting at the true tearing away at the social fabric. So when we say that industrial pollution, when we accept, I hope that we would all accept two things. First, that industrial pollution draws down our natural capital. Some of it is irreparable and irreplaceable. And similarly, digital pollution is drawing down our social capital and the trust that binds us together and makes all things possible. Like that is the core of all of it. And the more we pollute the space, the more trust is destroyed. And so even if we are upright, forward, positive, constructive actors in this scenario, we have to acknowledge that we're being, and you did this in the soliloquy too, even if we are doing well-meaning things the right way, it's arriving to people and sitting in feeds and sitting in inboxes and other scenarios alongside all of this other garbage. And so we don't always get the benefit of the doubt. So the consequences are very real. Even people who want to hear from us are like, oh gosh, I guess maybe I better go check my spam box for that, right? Even though it was sent by a well-meaning person to someone who wanted to hear from you. And so that's one. Is that we're drawing down social capital. The more we allow pollution to persist and the more ignorant we stay about it as this collective broad issue. And Judy Estrin did an amazing job in that piece. It's a couple of years old now. And she's really on the front edge of this conversation. The other big idea is just as clean air, and I hope we all accept this, just as clean air, clean water, and clean soil are absolute necessary precursors to true human health and thriving, so too are healthy digital spaces to human health and thriving. In the future, we're going to be spending more time in digital, virtual, and online spaces, not less. Think of that what you will. There will be some laggards and resistors and people that just say like, no, I'm not going to do that. But the vast majority of people will be spending more time in these spaces in the future, not less. And if we want to stop reading headlines about, you know, the internal documents at Facebook and Instagram about known harm to real young women, to a generation of young women, if we want to stop seeing that stuff, then we need to raise up this conversation, just as we want to stop hearing about cancer cases downstream of the effluent pipe from the known bad actor upstream. And so this, you know, the parallels are there. The whole first chapter is about these parallels, but we need to be really honest with ourselves about what we're all doing. And if we're not, then we're just going to do things that are not pro-human. And I think that doing pro-human things is why we're here. I think it's how we are all here living. Our lineage has learned to work well with one another, or else we wouldn't be here as individual human beings. And so the choice is ours about how we want to operate, what kind of legacy we want to leave, what kind of examples we want to model, and what kind of environment we want to live in.
I mean, it's another, now you get the air horn. I was thinking it's kind of sad and almost tragic that we have to qualify the word human with pro, and that there has to be a distinction. Like it should be just human. But Ethan, I had no idea that you were the philosopher that you are. I think that some very, very poignant, purposeful, profound, and very, very, very meaningful insights. And I love the connection. I mean, how, just as it turns out, the parallels, right, back to the physical and the digital. And I was thinking to myself, the thing that makes us so much harder, the digital part, is that it is digital. We can't, going back to the book, we can't touch it. We can't smell it. We can't taste it. It's much harder sometimes to be able to shape when it is shapeless. The book, you've done some amazing things. You put together some pre-order bundles, and those have physical and those have other things, like, for example, access. Are those bundles still available? Here's
the deal. If someone is watching this show and wants to take advantage of these, just hit me up, Ethan, ETHAN at BombBomb.com. They were for the pre-order window, but I will absolutely honor it. If someone thinks these ideas are important and they want to put these messages into other people's hands, I will absolutely honor these for you.
All right. That is very kind of you. And I will send something back to you as well, which is, if you want to connect with Ethan and find out more about him. Yes, I've flashed up various things like LinkedIn and Twitter and Instagram, but you can go to Linktree /Ethan Beute, where you'll get all of the links and obviously find out more about the book. And he has a podcast called the Custom Experience Podcast, which is how we met. And I am a two-time guest, episode 4, and most recently 125. And I cannot wait to be invited back for a third time. I hope there will be a third time.
I think that's definitely in the cards. I just try to keep some distance to keep, new conversations and new people in. But every time we connect, there's something new to talk about. And so I can definitely see you as a 3-time guest, Joseph.
Well, I look forward to it. And do I get my smoking jacket, or do I get my commemorative patch?
So the budget's still pretty low. I don't have any NFTs for you. I don't have a rare coin. And I don't have any jackets for you, but I do need to develop something, maybe start planning now and budgeting now for the 5-time guest.
Or maybe I'll get a personalized video, a personal video.
Yeah, you'll definitely get that. And so will anyone who emails me, by the way.
Wonderful. And maybe they'll even get this from Chuck Norris.
You are Chuck Norris approved.
It's amazing.
There you are. And I will be back tomorrow with Kate O'Neill. Ethan, it was an absolute pleasure. And I'll see you soon, I hope.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Take care. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you for watching the show about hope, positivity, optimism, and if there's time left over, a little bit of marketing with your host, multiple author, and global keynote speaker, Joseph JAFFE. If you like the show, tell a friend or two. Please subscribe to the show. And if you want to get inside news, previews of upcoming guests, and much more, visit josephjaffe.com/subscribe to sign up for the show's newsletter.
And despite the best ministrations of your wife, you still look ugly.